Yo everybody, me and Buster Green, and today I gotta talk about Lazarus. Episode 1 of Lazarus dropped on Saturday night, and it wasn't the greatest thing ever, but nonetheless, I think Lazarus coming out has already somehow changed my life. So in this video, I'm gonna do a quick review of that episode and then go heavy into the background and the discussion around the episode, which is already like a kind of hot fire that is constantly burning. All right, so let's start with the pre-production side because that's probably the most interesting story I have to talk about right now. Lazarus is a joint collab between Adult Swim, Aniplex, Mappa, and most importantly, Shinichiro Watanabe. And what's important was Watanabe had free go to make whatever the hell he wanted, as the series was paid for in full by current Adult Swim president Jason DeMarco. Now, DeMarco is kind of in a shit stew lately. He's been weirdly responsible for fucking up Uzumaki last year, and people have never really forgiven him for that. Now, he whined back at the time that the first director he worked with on Uzumaki on the pilot episode kind of screwed him by wasting a majority of the show's budget on that first episode. And that's still an ongoing argument because if you really unpack his statement and turn it around, then it sounds like the plan from day one was just Uzumaki was always going to be a shitty, low-budget, 4-episode shit anime, but the episode 1 director went rogue and made his episode the good one. So then that became a problem because instead of the anime just being an absolute disaster, it was 1 good episode and 3 disasters. So anyway, the level of quality just not being balanced is really important to having a good meal and a good anime, and nonetheless, Uzumaki just didn't reach the level of quality that people were expecting. Now, that brings us to Lazarus, which is his first project after that, and Lazarus got a much bigger, much higher budget, clocking in at 12 guaranteed episodes. But despite all that, people are still mad at DeMarco, and not about Uzumaki, now they're mad about Lazarus. So why they're mad is this interview that was published a few days ago. The interview pretty much goes into detail about the genesis of the series, that DeMarco invited Watanabe over to Warner Brothers and told him, "I want you to make another sci-fi action series." And Watanabe responded, "Can I make something like Space Dandy?" To which DeMarco replied, "No, something more serious." And that's the whole quote. But long story short, Watanabe had full creative freedom over the series as long as the series was, in one word, serious. All he had to do was make a serious show and he would get no notes, which is very cool. I need to state that that almost never happens in the industry. When you make something, usually like the network or the studio has some kind of ulterior motives and they'll, chicken peck your work to death, and that fucking sucks. However, of course, people were taking the statement super out of context, saying DeMarco crushed Watanabe's happy free spirit, whining that DeMarco stopped Watanabe from going fun and freaky again, and some people were even getting the story more twisted that Watanabe actually wanted to make Space Dandy Season 3, which seemed to never actually be in the cards. Maybe he did want to make Space Dandy Season 3, but I'm not counting on that ever happen because Space Dandy itself seems like an ancient relic now. It seems like, Dandy was a rockabilly and he hung out at a Hooters, and Hooters is going out of business now because modern day humans are too ashamed of sex. Otherwise, if you do press that statement for more details, it does seem like maybe Watanabe had some secret plan for some goofy Space Dandy successor series in the same tone. But either way, that simple conversation between Watanabe and DeMarco said that DeMarco was just not there to pay for that. He was there to pay for Lazarus or whatever other serious ideas Watanabe had to spit out. So I guess people are still mostly mad at DeMarco for him not putting the work into Uzumaki, but I want to say he overall did a good thing here by putting Watanabe back to work and greenlighting this series. Anyway, there's one more good story to come out of Lazarus' pre-production, and that's a story about Chad Stahelski, director of John Wick, action choreographer of the Matrix movies, a man I think I might have met once. Apparently, he full-on worked on Lazarus pro bono, albeit with the weird caveat that he took on the job out of guilt, knowing that he directly copied some of Watanabe's choreography from Bebop and the Bebop movie to use in the Matrix movies before. He felt guilty about that and he needed to repay the favor, so he worked for Watanabe here for free. I guess his philosophy there was, I got rich copying you, so now you'll get rich copying me. Kind of a fair way to sell the score, I guess. All right, so anyway, episode 1 came out Saturday night. Episode 1 instantly kind of got bad reviews. Not great reviews, but those posers on IGN gave it a 50 out of 100. Does IGN just give everything shitty reviews nowadays unless they get bribed not to? What a complete bunch of shills. Anyway, yeah, I watched the first episode. I liked it. It wasn't world changing. It wasn't the greatest thing ever. Like, the only thing that really happens in the first episode is we're introduced to Axel Gilberto, a man in prison who's really good at escaping from prison. And then he escapes from prison. He like bungles a cop and then he gets captured. The first episode does seem a little bit fillery because it's almost entirely a parkour chase, and the action here is great. It's like very beautiful, very visual action. I personally would have preferred Axel Gilberto maybe causing a little bit more destruction, maybe blowing up some cars, but I guess that wasn't the point. The point is that this is a man having a beautiful life, and he was a man having a beautiful life because he can escape from prison and he can never be contained in a prison. It's less about how good he is about escaping from prison and more about how he just has like this ultimate level of freedom that like all humans seek to achieve. Now that at the end of the episode, he's outsmarted by the team's femme fatale, Christine, who tries to get a selfie with him and knocks him out. And then he's forced to join the Lazarus team because I guess they put like a Suicide Squad bomb on his arm or something. Anyway, let's get into what Lazarus is actually about because the themes behind the show are pretty insane. Watanabe has always been pretty critical and at times openly hostile towards the American healthcare system because he knows how fucked it is because he comes from a country that has healthcare. There were some major themes of healthcare corruption embedded in Cowboy Bebop, and I need to mention that because the Netflix version felt extremely necessary to remove them all and not mention that at all because, you know, the healthcare companies pay for Netflix, I guess. By the way, I absolutely am dying to see Watanabe make anything addressing Luigi Mansions because I know he definitely has some deep thoughts about Luigi's Mansions, but I wouldn't count on it because Lazarus, the show, was already written and deep in animation by 2023, and the CEO murders, as we all know, took place in 2024. So there's definitely no chance of any mentions of Luigi's Mansions, but please, for the love of God, watch the show because I know for a fact that if it gets a season 2 or Watanabe is able to make anything else, he'll definitely cover Luigi in a second season. I know he's just waiting to get into that. Anyway, that being said, Watanabe gave this other interview where he went on in detail the weird perspective he has of drugs because of how much he loves music. And because drugs are more regulated in Japan than they are in America, Watanabe has always, first and foremost, been kind of a connoisseur of good music. I think that's something I realized this weekend, that he's just like a man who absolutely knows the best shit there is when it comes to music. But a majority of like the music legends he looked up to when he was a kid all died these violent rock star overdose deaths, like DMX, Morrison, Elvis, Hendrix, Whitney Houston, Janis Joplin, all OD'd in dramatic ways. And Lazarus seems even more focused on that because it's specifically focused on the recent OD deaths of Prince and Michael Jackson, who were both killed in our lifetime in recent memory by their in-house prescription doctor who OD'd them both on painkillers. And there's this kind of twistedness when I really think about that, like in the context of my childhood and like the spectrum of the time I've been alive. When I was a little kid, when I was first born, everyone wanted to be Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was the man. You wanted to be him. You wanted to be with him. You wanted to be like him. In the 90s, there wasn't a single kid on earth who didn't know how to do the moonwalk. And there's definitely people who I think still have that dream even to this day. But retroactively, that dream has been warped and corrupted because of the way Michael Jackson died. Like if I asked you right now to your face, do you want to be Michael Jackson? Do you want to live like that? Do you want to be manipulated by that? If you could have everything he had, every level of success, but you knew you would die the way he did, would it all be worth it? Think about it. Anyway, that's what Lazarus is kind of about, or I guess more broadly, it's about the opioid and fentanyl epidemic that has killed and ruined numerous low and middle class Americans in the past 20 years. Lazarus is kind of like this Cowboy Bebop throwback in that it's a team of not quite bounty hunters, definitely pursuing a man, in this case, a mad scientist, Steve Jobs clone named Dr. Skinner, who created this drug called Hapna. The drug somehow being the best painkiller ever made, except somehow Dr. Skinner managed to hide this time bomb virus inside this drug that when the drug reaches its 3-year half-life point, the virus gets released, goes off, and kills anyone who's ever taken the drug. So yeah, that's crazy. Skinner has made a vaccine to stop the virus, but he'll only give it to someone who finds him, which is what Team Lazarus is set up to do. So it's a wild, crazy manhunt. But yeah, that premise is a fucking crazy premise. Like, I can think of like a million questions about why would anyone even do that? Like, did he just like hate the human race that much? Or is this like some kind of like manifesto statement from Watanabe about like what he really thinks about like drug users and drug dealers? Anyway, that seems to be spreading to the atmosphere of the show, and it brings this like hopelessness vibe to it that a majority of the people on Earth are just accepting their deaths as a done deal and maybe going a little bit crazy from it. It's definitely turning into one of those you have 30 days to live stories. Instead of like see you next time, cowboy, it's like ending on like a counter of like how many days are left. So yeah, I feel like that's a great like tension device. I feel like that's going to cause like a lot of normal people to crack and do some crazy stuff in like the course of the series. Although I gotta believe it's definitely possible that there would be some amount of people who have never used Hapna. Like even if you consider that like every person like got it when they went to the dentist, like there's got to be some like hardcore straight edge people out there who like would have never taken it, or like otherwise maybe like an uncivilized native tribe would have been spared. Anyway, here's my character breakdown. I'm pretty excited about the cast in the show. We got our Spike clone, Axel Gilberto. He's totally different from Spike in that he is a Brazilian parkour master and escape artist, but he's still got that Spike main character energy that like Mugen and Dandy also had. A lot of people are saying he's a reference to bossa nova guitarist João Gilberto, but I'm not so sure. I think it's actually more possible that he's a reference to Zhao's wife, Astrid Gilberto, because they have the same initials. And I just know because I lived in Japan, Astrid Gilberto is way more popular in Japan than Zhao ever was, because Astrid outlived Zhao by like another 5 years. Anyway, both of them are legends in the Brazilian bossa nova community, with Zhao being a legendary composer and her being a legendary singer. So maybe it's a reference to both of them or neither of them. Maybe Watanabe just couldn't think of a more Brazilian name than that. I mean, his first name is Axel. Maybe that's a reference to Axel from Guns N' Roses. Anyway, the Jet Jigen role is filled by Douglas Adine, a Nigerian physics professor who I guess is like the team's physicist. Overall, super cool character. Also, despite the fact that Jet was adopted by the black community, this is like the first time we've had Watanabe really writing a black role in an anime like this. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm excited to see if maybe like Watanabe has like more to say about like the black experience. And then Christine is the team's femme fatale, the strong Russian woman, a heavy drinker. Way more Fujiko Mine than Faye Valentine ever was. I dig that she has a lot of cliche strong woman qualities, but is still kind of sexy and feminine despite that. Christine is frequently seen with Leyland, a Canadian teenager who is the team's drone operator. Leland so far is probably my least favorite character in the show. I'm not too optimistic on him. He's initially showed as a normal teenager who drops out of college. I kind of liked him more when I thought he was just not connected to the story and just a normal character like living in this world, because otherwise he seems like a little bit of dead weight on this like elite like bounty hunting team. And lastly, my favorite character so far is Elena, who seems to be the team's Hong Kongese hacker. She's kind of like Ed from Bebop, but then she's a sexy e-girl. So she's like Ed and Faye put together in a weird mashup. And speaking of Faye, Megumi Hayashibara is back in the Japanese version doing the voice of the team's leader, Hirsch, who is your typical Amanda Waller, I am the government lady. Oh, and yeah, speaking of Bebop actors, Spike's actor Koichi Yamadera is back doing Dr. Skinner too, so that's there if you gotta know. So yeah, interesting scandals aside, cool characters aside, so first episode aside, I'm actually all in on Lazarus because this is something I've been waiting for. Adult Swim had done an unprecedented good here just by putting Watanabe back to work, and I kind of realized something was missing from my life after this first episode. Watanabe has always had this like deep respect and awareness for the music industry, and not having a Watanabe show like pushing that to me is like kind of like left a void in my life, and I really realized that after like Lazarus came out, and like after the fact I like started like digging deep into the soundtrack, because Cowboy Bebop wasn't just Cowboy Bebop, it was the Bebop soundtrack. And I played the Bebop soundtrack on a CD on a loop for most of my teen years, probably way more than I ever watched Bebop itself. Because it wasn't just Tank and the Real Folk Blues, it was getting to Yoko Kanno. It was playing the Real Folk Blues so many times that I realized that Mai Yamane is a fucking jewel who also sang Tassogare, one of like the baddest songs ever written. Then when Samurai Champloo came out, I got super into Nujabes, and then like even Space Dandy had its handful of bangers. Carol and Tuesday was kind of like a little bit of a letdown. Too pop, didn't really do it for me. But yeah, with Lazarus, Watanabe's back bringing that good shit. Like, I just got introduced to Bonobo. Bonobo was fucking crazy. Like, I don't know how to describe their music. It's like 1930s depressing hip hop. Lazarus is some good shit, and it's hitting me like a freight truck and making me realize I haven't had a good meal in 10 years. Like, I've been playing the Lazarus soundtrack for the past 2 days on a loop as I've been working. And like, if nothing else, I'm happy for Lazarus for the soundtrack alone. Even if the next 11 episodes of Lazarus are just Axel eating bell peppers and beef and trying to find a moldy space lobster, I'm fucking sold on this show because DeMarco brought Watanabe out of retirement, and Watanabe's music choices have brought my soul out of retirement. I feel like I'm alive again for the first time in years. Anyway, I'm pensively hopeful Lazarus will get better just because the music is so fucking sweet. Watanabe obviously knows what he's doing. The show is being made by some like top level industry experts. So I have a lot of faith that we're going to get like an awesome experience here. I just really, really hope that everyone is like also down on the show because I really think that Watanabe will do some incredible stuff in season 2 just reacting to recent events and the way the world is nowadays. By the way, if you guys like Cowboy Bebop or Lazarus, may I suggest you check out the South Jersey Mutant Busters, an anime made by a handsome young man that seems like it might one day have as many episodes as Cowboy Bebop if people keep giving me money to keep making episodes of it. It's pretty cool. You should watch it. All right, let me know what you guys think. I want to go to a buffet.